portion of the river. It was our terminus. We'd return to the White House for refreshments. I turned to the party with me. I said, "Gentlemen, let us take off our clothes, put the bundles atop our heads, swim the river, put our clothes back on dry, and continue our hike." We all did so, but the ambassador, I noticed, as we got into the water, had kept on his kid gloves. I said, "Mr. Ambassador, why have you kept on your gloves?" He said, "Mr. President, that's in case we meet any ladies." I had a wonderful life. I, on election night 1904, told the assembled press, under no circumstances would I run for a third term. I would indeed recognize the Washingtonian tradition of serving no more than 2 terms, the term I completed for President McKinley being my first, this now being my second. And Mrs. Roosevelt winced on hearing that. Later that night she said, "Theodore, that was not a very wise thing to say. I declared myself a lame duck. And if I had problems with Congress in my first administration, imagine them in my second. I was a progressive president, believing in the power of the executive. And I can tell you, in my terms, I understood that the opposite of progress was too often Congress." But I hope you appreciate that I got some things done for the American people and the people of the world. Indeed, in foreign policy, I think the most important thing we accomplished was to dig the great Panama Canal. And at the end of my term, to send the Navy around the world, the great White Fleet, to prove that we could do in peacetime what might be necessary to do in wartime. Domestically, does anything compare, Mr. Secretary, with the tremendous wonder of the national parks, our national forests, refuges, and monuments, 230 million acres added to the protection of the people? But I share with you, in my life, I had tragedy, I had failure. You know, early in my political career, I ran for the mayor of New York. I came in 3rd out of 3. But remember, as you go forward, so many of you, community leaders and public servants, when you do your good deeds, you know you will be criticized. Remember what I told the French at the Sorbonne in 1910, and I tell you now, and this perhaps is the most wonderful thing, that these words are stenciled on the flight deck of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the Navy's big stick. As you hear them, please say a silent prayer for the men and women of all of our armed services deployed in harm's way. Remember, it is not the critic who counts. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man and today to the woman who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great devotions, the great enthusiasms, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and who, in the end, at the best, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, that his name shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Now indeed, thank you. I share with you that after my presidency, after hunting in Africa with Kermit, you know, J.P. Morgan toasted our leaving New York Harbor, thusly in his library, to the lions. May they do their job. But we came back from Africa and Europe, and I became concerned about what was going on in America, and I ran for the presidency again, first as a Republican, then as a bold moose progressive independent. And in 1912, on October 14th in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I was shot in the chest by an assassin. I spit into my palm. Being a hunter, I checked. There was no blood in my spittle. My lung was not punctured. It was but a mere flesh wound. I demanded to go and speak to the auditorium with the bullet in my chest. I pulled my jacket aside, showed the audience my blouse, and said, "You must excuse me. You may not understand. I've just been shot. But it takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. And I spoke for 80 minutes. And right now, the social officer of the White House is wondering if it will take a handgun to get me to stop speaking now. I assure you, madam, I am concluding, but I conclude with this. Perhaps it is, amongst all the things that are known, the Panama Canal, pure food and drug, good laws and a square deal for the American people, perhaps I'm known best for a failed bear hunt. I tell you, I hope that each and every one of you will make sure that the children of this country, especially those in the children's hospitals, that they have a teddy bear. And if you would like to help support that, you may inquire of the Theodore Roosevelt Association, now building a great museum for me in Oyster Bay, Long Island, New York. And this indeed, at theodoroosevelt.org, is one of their wonderful signal accomplishments to bring teddy bears and the love and comfort therein to the sick children of our country. I can think of nothing better as a legacy. I congratulate each and every one of you on being here this evening, and you were in for a treat. Can you imagine a New York dude like me with a Harvard education getting off of a Union Pacific train in 1883 in Medora, North Dakota with the intent of hunting buffalo and buying a cattle ranch? I would have never been president but for my time in the Dakotas. Indeed, it was the Wild West, the time of Owen Wister's stories and Frederick Remington's drawings and paintings. And it is a Wild West and a love of the Dakotas that will come to you tonight in the wonderful music of Mr. Job Christensen and Mr. Joel Gilbertson, who will play the piano and sing for you tonight about that wonderful territory, Dakota. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President and Mrs. First Lady, God bless and keep you all. Thank you.